UFC Vegas 32, aka UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Dillashaw. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by the name of Zan, I go by the name of Harris, and as usual, we are giving you our fight by fight breakdown, fight by fight analysis, specifically from the betting perspective, letting you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you want to avoid, which underdogs have a shot at winning. And if you stick around to the end of the video, you might even get a little bit of parlay action. In our usual fashion, we are going to start with the prelims. Before we start, we do ask that you do all of that algorithmic stuff. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, participate in the comments, and let's see where we go from there. So on this UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Dillashaw, we have 12 fights on the card, 6 fights on our prelims. So in our usual fashion, we are going to start with fight number 1. We have Diana Belbiţă taking on Hannah Goldy, and I'm going to start with analyzing this fight first with Diana Belbiţă. So we see her here at 13-6. She's 0-2 in the UFC. She last fought July 2020. She lost in that fight. That was to Liana Jojua, and that was a round 1 armbar. Romanian fighter, so she does have that East European toughness to her. She's introduced in the ring as a striker. So again, I always take note of that. Very heavy-handed, likes to put those strikes together, true to the form. A lot of 3 and 4 punch combinations. She likes to come forward a lot. Very much a pressure fighter, bit of a brawler as well. And she does push a high pace early in the fight. She looks like she has a decent clinch. Looks like she can take you down as well. She did take Jojua down, but then she did quickly expose herself to that armbar. So maybe her submission defense is a little questionable at that point. I don't think she has the best takedown defense in general, although I have seen her show some scramble ability and get back to her feet. Cardio, in my opinion, is a little questionable. And with Belbiţă, with that sort of brawling or borderline brawling style, she really only has one gear and one style and one game plan. So if it doesn't work, she doesn't really have that ability to change it up. Hannah Goldy, on the other hand, we see her here at 5-1. Pretty balanced and a pretty patient striker. She does like that leg kick a lot with that lead leg. Has some pop with her right hook as well. Definitely fights from the outside, fights from a distance. So two clashing styles on the feet. She is the shorter fighter as well, standing at 5'4" in this 125-pound division. She will set up some decent combinations, but we did see, for example, in her fight with Miranda Granger, who's not a striker in my opinion, she was able to outstrike her to win that fight in a fight that stayed on the feet. So as much as I can say about Hannah Goldy's stand-up, I can't necessarily say it's strong per se. And very important to note that Hannah Goldy did fight at 115. So in addition to having the height disadvantage, I think she'll also physically be the weaker fighter of the two. I will say this, it's a relatively low-level fight to open up this card. When I was looking at Tapology early in the week, I did see Belbiţă at one point at plus 155, which I thought was a complete mismatch. Looking at ESPN here now, I'm seeing her at plus 110. To me, that makes a lot more sense. I do think Belbiţă, to be honest, she might be the better fighter. And if she's not the better fighter, I do feel like her style will be more effective versus a Hannah Goldy type of fighter. I do expect Belbiţă to be coming forward with pressure. I think she's the bigger fighter physically. I think she's going to engage. And although Granger has a decent clinch, again, I think Belbiţă's size will allow for her to have maybe a more effective clinch than Granger. In a lot of ways, I can see it going somewhat similar to Goldy's last fight versus Miranda Granger. She's bigger. Granger was bigger, longer. She was coming forward. I can anticipate Belbiţă being bigger, longer, coming forward. And Belbiţă, you also have to think about it. She's 0-2 in the UFC. She's hungry for a win. I think about Malcolm Gordon last week, taking on Figueroa. It could possibly be that same type of X factor where she's fighting for her job. So I actually want to start this card with the underdog, Diana Belbiţă. She's going to be my pick.
Okay, I like that. This is a tough fight, like you said. This is definitely lower level fighters. Hannah Goldy, she hasn't won a fight in the UFC. She had a win on the Contender Series. Diana Belbiţă, the taller fighter in this matchup, 25. She hasn't won a fight in the UFC. And when the UFC gave her, it looks like the UFC wanted her to win her last fight. They gave her Liana Jojua, and I was really, really upset in that fight where this is a fight where Jojua, only way to win the fight would be by an armbar off her back. That's the only way she has really won fights. And Belbiţă was winning the striking and clinches with her, takes her down and sits in her guard and gets armbarred. So her IQ is definitely a big concern. But I'm gonna echo Harris here. I think that Diana is the better fighter here. She at least won a round in the UFC against a decent competitor in Molly McCann. Hannah Goldy, I don't even think she won a round versus Miranda Granger. How she fights, she kind of waits to get hit, and she kind of it's kind of like a sparring match. She's just moving around the ring. And Belbiţă, yeah, she throws everything, kicks, punches. It's kind of it's effective. It doesn't look the best, but it's really effective in the women's division because it's a really active style that was actually giving Molly McCann problems. And Molly McCann had looked pretty decent in some situations in striking versus some fighters. So I'm going to echo you. I'm going to go with Diana Belbiţă here. I just think that, yeah, she's the more aggressive fighter. She should be the more active fighter in this fight. And I just feel Goldy, she just kind of treats every fight kind of like a sparring match. And with her physical, she's really built. I'm not sure if that can go 3 rounds, right? So I can see Goldy getting tired in the second round. I could even just see Belbiţă winning all three rounds, just being the better fighter. So I'm going to go Belbiţă because I haven't seen Goldy go for takedowns. I didn't see her go for a single takedown in that fight versus the fight that she lost versus Granger. So if she's not going for the takedowns and this is just a strictly stand-up fight, I'll go with the fighter that has more stand-up options, more striking tools, and the taller fighter, obviously, right? So, yeah, I'm going to echo your pick. I got Belbiţă. Sorry for ranting, but that's my pick.
All good. It's worth it, especially when calling an underdog. Let's move on to fight number 2. We have Sijara Eubanks taking on the newcomer in Elise Reed. I'll keep this one pretty quick. Eubanks is on a 2-fight losing streak. We see her record there at almost 500, 7-6. She lost to Pani Kianzad back in December. She's one of those fighters. I mean, at this point, she's a veteran. She has a little bit of everything. Pretty good boxer, willing to engage, willing to trade shots, decent front low kick. She'll play that role of counterpuncher sometimes, but she can also come forward as well. Has some solid takedowns. She's also a BJJ black belt. So that speaks to her overall ground game. Good takedown defense, maybe early in the fight at the very least. But to that point, cardio has been an issue for her in the past. Doesn't really have that extra gear. Now we see her here as the big favorite at -310, taking on the newcomer in Elise Reed. She's coming from CFFC. She also fought 1 fight in Bellator. What's interesting about Elise Reed, this being a women's flyweight fight at 125, her last few fights have been at 115. And I think 3 fights ago, she fought at 105. So this fight is at 125. Obviously going to be very interesting to see how much of a factor that plays. She likes to keep it on the feet. She looks decent, nice jab, well-timed right straight as well. She has shown me some decent striking defense in her fights, has shown me some decent kicks. Probably what I like best about her stand-up is sort of that consistent pace where she is coming forward. She's a pretty diverse striker too. She has shown me, I should say, some decent takedown defense in her previous fights as well. Looks to be good on top as well. Looks to have some decent ground and pound, or at the very least, some aggressive ground and pound. But what she hasn't shown me, obviously, is level of competition. Not really fighting at a high level, in my opinion. Size does mean a lot in these women's fights. Eubanks is coming down from 135, while Reed, again, only a few fights ago was fighting at 105. So this being a 125 fight, in addition to the size, I also think there's just levels to this. And I think Sijara is the veteran. I think she's going to get the job done.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying fully on that one. And we got to remember this, right? What's her name? Sijara Eubanks had 7 weeks training camp. So she had 7-week notice that she had a fight coming up. And then the fight was canceled with Cochera, what's his name? Priscilla Cochera, the Brazilian. That fight was canceled. And then they brought in Elise Reed. So Elise Reed only has 2.5 weeks notice here. So she's basically coming in. That's why she's moving up in weight. She's the champion in the organization she's in. Was that CFFC, I think it's called? Yeah, CFFC. She's a 115-pound champion. Now, when it comes to both of these fighters, this girl, Reed, she's a really good newcomer. I'm surprised they're throwing her in there with Sijara, because Elise Reed is really good. She has really good taekwondo, good stand-up. She has good footwork. She moves around. She's not going to be stationary. And she has, in this fight, she definitely has the better striking, definitely has the better stand-up. But Sijara Eubanks has been fighting at 135 pounds. Now, I will say that I think Elise Reed is pound for pound the better fighter. I really do. I really think so. And I really think that Elise Reed is going to have a really good career in the UFC. I think she has a higher ceiling, and she's going to have a better career when it's all said and done than Sijara Eubanks. I really, really believe that, going down to the 115-pound division, a slick type of striker that has good takedown defense. But it's going to be hard to stop takedowns when someone has such a size advantage on you. And Eubanks, you spot these 135-pound fighters, and she has never been knocked out. Her record is not good, 6-6. But one thing about women's MMA, it's so shallow. The talent pool is so shallow that they all keep fighting each other. And then you notice fighters in the women's divisions, 9-6 or 10-8, and they're good fighters. And in the men's division, it's not as shallow. Like, you could beat a lot of guys at the bottom, get like 5 wins at the bottom before you get to the meat and potatoes of the division, right? So, but in the women's division, once you get in there after your second fight, you're fighting the meat and the potatoes, right? So that's why you see these type of records in the women's division. It's a shallow division where everyone is pretty close, except for obviously a couple fighters, right? So, but I think the size is going to be a big difference here. Eubanks, if she doesn't get knocked out here, she's going to eventually get the clinch, and she's looking to muscle her way into a takedown. And I could see her doing that for at least 2 rounds here. I think Elise Reed is money, because we don't know if she can really stop these takedowns. But I got to go with the logic here, and I got to go with the bigger girl that can take the shots from 135 and is going to be fighting a 115-pounder, really. That's moving up in weight. So Eubanks should have a big strength advantage here. So Sijara is my pick.
Sounds good to me. So in unison so far, we are going to move on to fight number 3. We have Julio Arce taking on Andre Ewell. This is a pretty good matchup here. Some really good matchmaking by the UFC. What I will say is sort of similar to Diana Belbiţă. When I was taking a look at this fight, at least on Tapology, I will check ESPN very shortly, I saw Ewell sitting at plus 170. Let's take a look at what he is. So he is still plus 170 at this point. And I had the same reaction as I had when I initially saw Belbiţă. I think these odds are way off. I think at worst, this is a 50-50 fight. I do think that these are two somewhat similar fighters in some ways. Arce, 2 years since his last fight, he has a southpaw, decent stand-up. He'll mix it up well, good movement, very light on the feet, fights from the outside as well. Some decent combos, really good striking speed, pretty good natural kickboxer. Keeps the fight on the feet, but I've also seen him be outstruck, right? He's somewhat timid in his stance at times. In my opinion, doesn't really throw enough strikes, even though we're seeing the striking rate pretty solid there at 4.25 significant strikes landed per minute. He does have a decent ground game. He is able to keep his opponent on the ground should it get there. But again, I do think that this fight is going to stay on the feet. Andre Ewell, on the other hand, he last fought in February. He lost to Chris Gutierrez. Very athletic, explosive, dynamic fighter. He's also a tall southpaw, very methodical in his striking, very quick, long striking, fights at a distance, has a lot of hand speed, likes that 1-2 from range. Sometimes that can actually work against him. He gets a little one-dimensional, but he really likes that 1-2 jab cross, and it's a heavy approach of his. It's a heavy attack of his, and it works on a lot of people. He has a sneaky high kick, really good front kick as well. Keeps his opponents honest, keeps them at distance, allows him to be the longer fighter and to fight from range. And I mean, he's known to kind of start fights very quickly. Definitely starts to fade as the fight goes on. And again, like I said, the first thing I thought here was that the odds were way off. I can agree and understand that Arce probably has the better overall MMA game. But in me thinking that this fight stays on the feet, I think Ewell is maybe a bit faster in his striking, maybe a bit stronger in his striking as well, from what I've seen. Like I said, at worst, in my opinion, this is a 50-50 fight. And I'm going to kind of go with Vegas logic on this. When I think it's a 50-50 fight and I see an underdog at this size at plus 170, I can't help but go with the underdog. So I'm actually going to go with Andre Ewell on this fight for my second underdog pick of the card so far.
Yeah, this is a tough one, right? This is a tough fight, but I'm gonna make my pick quick here. Andre Ewell here, as the fight goes on, he kind of slows down for me. And Julio Arce is pretty methodical with his boxing here. This is going to be a striking fight. Arce is going to be the shorter fighter with the shorter fighter with less reach. I just think he's the better MMA fighter here. I just think he has better cardio. I believe he has the better boxing now. He doesn't have the reach, but I think if this goes to the ground, I think Arce has a huge advantage there. Arce rarely goes there, but he lost his last fight with his job on the line here. Possibly, he might go out there with a full MMA game here, and if not, I still believe that he can beat Ewell in a boxing match. I believe he could beat him here. I think Ewell slows down. So Arce is my pick here. I just think he's the better striker.
Sounds good to me. So let's move on to fight number 4. We have Adrian Yanez taking on Randy Costa. How do you feel about this one?
I think this fight is an interesting fight here because when you look at Costa, he has an awkward stand-up style here. He throws kicks from odd angles. He has power. He can finish you. He can knock you out. But he's fighting a precise boxer in Adrian Yanez. So I believe Costa has the kicking advantage. I believe this first off is going to stay standing. I think this is going to be a stand-up fight. Even if Costa tries to go for takedowns, I think Yanez has enough know-how to keep this on the feet here against Costa. But I don't think Costa is going to do that here. I think he's going to keep this standing here. He likes to switch his stances from southpaw to orthodox. He's very awkward in there, and he catches guys. He catches guys when they least expect it, right? He tries to sneak one on you, right? So, but I think what this fight is going to come down to is Adrian Yanez's precise boxing here, because he's going to have a lot of time to utilize that boxing. It's going to be a stand-up fight. He's going to be able to get in. He has really good counters, probably some of the best counters that you'll see in the UFC. And I think we're going to see it on Saturday. So I think Adrian Yanez is going to knock out Costa. His stand-up, his kind of reckless style stand-up here, throwing stuff from odd angles. I think he's going to get caught here by Yanez. And I think Yanez is going to finish him.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my prediction really short in that case because you said every single point that I would have mentioned as well. Costa relies on that awkwardness to throw people's timing off. But with Yanez, he just has that technical striking advantage. He has that, that pure boxing, that counter-punching ability. I think he's going to completely be able to read Costa. I don't think Costa's really going to be too much of a threat to Adrian Yanez. And I mean, I'm really curious to see what Yanez by KO would pay, or at least Yanez by finish, if I want to be a little safer. Otherwise, minus 195, I'm not even too mad at that. I do like Adrian Yanez in this fight. So let's move on to fight number 5. This one is a pretty difficult fight to call. We have Nassourdine Imavov taking on Ian Heinisch. How do you feel about this one?
Okay. This is one of the hardest fights for me on this card, because in this fight, Ian Heinisch, I believe, he definitely has the wrestling advantage. He's the strong, big-looking middleweight here, and I don't think he has the best technique wrestling. I think it comes down to that power that he has, and once he gets a hold of you here, you can kind of dictate where you go, and he gets a lot of takedowns just by being so strong. And we seen when Imavov fought a high level wrestler, he got taken down. And that was a big thing in that fight versus Phil Haas. So the thing is, Phil Haas is a much higher level wrestler than Ian Heinisch. So I'm not sure if Imavov can keep this standing. I think if it stays standing, though, I think Imavov is going to style on Ian Heinisch. And my pick, I'm not sure who's the underdog or the favorite here. I didn't check the odds, but I'm rolling with my boy Imavov. I'm actually rolling with Imavov here. I think that in this fight, even if he gets taken down, he's Russian. He's from Dagestan. They say he's from France. They have the France flag, but his nickname is the Russian Sniper. So everyone in Dagestan knows wrestling. And at the end of the day, Ian Heinisch is not some high-level wrestler like Phil Haas, an NCAA, a great fighter. I'm sorry, a great wrestler in college. He's not like Heinisch is not on that level, but Heinisch is a good wrestler. Imavov should have enough of that Dagestan wrestling in him to negate whatever Heinisch tries to do. And I think if this stays standing, 6'3", and he knows how to use it, and he has a good jab, he has good counters. Like I think he's the far better striker standing up, but Heinisch definitely can land that bomb. So I'm gonna roll with my boy Imavov here. I think he should have some type of ability to stop Heinisch's wrestling here, because again, like I said, Heinisch is not. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't believe Heinisch is any type of NCAA wrestler. So I'm not sure. I believe he went to jail in Singapore for a bunch of years for something serious, and then he switched to MMA. Something. His story is crazy if you actually look into Ian Heinisch's path to the UFC. Right, it's a crazy. Probably make a movie about this guy, but I'm gonna go Imavov here. Keep the standing enough, and I think he should be able to snipe him off. So that's my pick.
To that point, in your earlier question of who's the underdog, Imavov is the underdog on this one at plus 130. Ian Heinisch is the favorite at minus 155. And to your point, I mean, this is a very difficult fight to call. I'm going to probably warn the bettors, don't bet on this one, in my opinion, at the very least. With Imavov, I think that barometer is Phil Haas being able to land those takedowns, especially early in that fight. But to your point, Heinisch is not necessarily that. The counterpoint to that is that Imavov, has 60% takedown defense. I think it's an honest percentage, but it's not a great percentage. So he is able to be taken down. And then further to that point, another counterpoint to that is Ian Heinisch only averages 1.13 takedowns per fight at 18% accuracy.
But can I say so? Hold on. Can I say something about that though?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. He fought Cesar Ferreira, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Antonio Carlos Jr., black belt, Derek Brunson, NCAA wrestler, Omar Akhmedov, Russian wrestler, Gerald Mearshart. That ended in one round, so there wasn't anything happened there. And Kelvin Gastelum. So he's fought. This is like the first. He's fought a bunch of grapplers first, aside from maybe Gastelum, right? But Gastelum is a wrestler too. So I just want to throw that in there. That's why his takedowns. He's not getting many takedowns, right, Heinisch? Where in this fight he might be able to. I don't know, man. Sorry to interrupt you, man. I know you're going.
All good. But ultimately, I think that there's a bit of a dice roll in this. I'm actually going to roll the dice that Heinisch will be able to land those takedowns. And you bring up sort of the perfect counterpoint to that in terms of why that could happen as well, in terms of the fighters that he has faced and what his current takedown rate and accuracy is. Almost not truly telling of his ability. So I am going to roll the dice that Heinisch will be able to land the takedowns. Again, I'm going to warn, I will not want to bet on this fight at all. I want nothing to do with this one. I'm just going to watch it. But again, I think that Heinisch will be able to land the takedowns enough to win the round for at least 2 rounds. I think in terms of Imavov, styling on the feet, I think that definitely will happen, maybe for 1.5 rounds. But we sort of know how the judges are, where they, count that takedown sometimes for more than what it's worth. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a split decision, very close fight. But Ian Heinisch is going to be my pick at minus 155.
I can't hate on that. I can't hate on that at all. 50-50 fight.
Absolutely. The Chris Daukaus fight was called off, so we're going to skip that one. And we're going to go ahead to then fight number 6, final fight of our prelims, Punahele Soriano taking on Brendan Allen. I'll start this one off, and I'll start with Soriano. He is undefeated, 8-0. Very impressive win in his last fight versus Dusko Todorovic. That was not too long ago, back in January. So he's 2-0 in the UFC now. Southpaw on the feet, has a lot of pop in that left hand, especially as a counter puncher. Probably his favorite punch as well. So look for him to use that a lot. He does have heavy hands, a lot of looping punches. He can throw them in combinations as well. He does kind of wing them though. So, big misses when he misses. Big swings. Obviously, he hits hard when he lands. He'll include kicks in there as well. So he will diversify it a bit. Looked really strong in grappling situations versus Oscar Piechota, going back to his UFC debut. Also his Dana White Contender Series fight, it did show me an ability to take the other person down. Has some solid wrestling for sure. State champion wrestler, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he has too much diversity in his attack, but in some ways doesn't quite need it yet at this level that he's at. And, likes to come forward. He can put that pressure on you, especially when he has you hurt. He can really start to put the pressure on. Brendan Allen, on the other hand, he did win his last fight back in April. That was versus Carl Roberson. Still just 25 years old. I mean, you see him there at 20 professional fights. Still just 25 years old, still getting better every fight. And he's somebody who's improving every fight. And you can see that improvement carry itself out in the ring. Definitely an improved striker. He is getting a little bit more technical, in my opinion. I thought he was a little wild before. His stand-up looked pretty decent versus Roberson. And I mean, we know who Carl Roberson is, very good in the stand-up. So Brendan Allen's stand-up did look decent. I am satisfied with how it looked. Of course, we do know his ability to pressure, be explosive, but now he sort of takes his time on the feet a bit more as well. He doesn't really only have one gear, spends a little bit more time reading the opponent. Also in that Carl Roberson fight, I like the kicks that he was throwing. I thought he mixed up his striking really well. Again, the hands are getting better. They did look good in that fight. And we know his grappling ability, right? Pretty good on top, good mix of grappling with ground and pound, has that ability to keep you on the ground as well. Again, very, very interesting matchup. I think Allen probably has the better ground game. Definitely the better grappler, in my opinion. I think he's the better quote unquote MMA wrestler, in my opinion, as well. I think Soriano, on the other hand, has the better stand up, probably. Again, Brendan Allen is improving every single fight. So, although I do think he has a stand up advantage, I think Allen could close that gap from what we've seen way back in January. I actually think just Allen maybe just has a little bit more to offer in this fight in terms of diversity, in terms of ways to win. Whereas Soriano, a little bit of a one-trick pony. Very close fight, though. I mean, Soriano could pop his head off. He has that power to do so. But I'm going to go with the more complete, in my opinion, MMA game. And I'm going with Brendan Allen. He's going to be my pick, minus 115.
Yeah, this fight, I like this fight. To me, this is one of the fights I'm looking forward to. This is a really stacked card. This is actually one of the better cards of the year. It doesn't have the big names, but it has all that stuff in the middle, right? So with Soriano, Brendan Allen here, we know Brendan Allen wants to get this to the mat. He's I believe he's a black belt, or if not, he moves like one. He's really strong. He's a big middleweight, 6'2". So he definitely didn't want to get this to the mat, but it's not going to happen because Punahele Soriano's a Division III All-American wrestler. So even though it's not Division I, being an All-American in any division is a lot higher than the majority of the UFC. Probably 90% of the UFC. There's that 10% Division I. There's those Russian guys. There's those, you know what I'm saying? So, but Division III is highly effective, and he's going to keep us on the feet. And Soriano has that touch of death we talk about. He's one of the hardest hitters in the middleweight division. And I think he's going to knock out Brendan Allen. I think he's going to finish him. So the only concern I have is that Soriano, I would assume Brendan Allen has better cardio, having gone the distance many, many times. But I don't think he gets that far. I think if Soriano hits let's say 7 hooks, I think 7 hooks are straights, I think he's going down. So I don't think he'll get that far. I think it's getting to the second round max, but I'm expecting a first round knockout.
To your point, touch of death. I'm not mad at that call at all. I mean, I can definitely see that happening as well. Let's take it to Vegas in that case. Let's see how we feel in terms of making a few calls on the betting lines. Let's start with an underdog pick. Who are you considering for this UFC Vegas 32 card?
All right, underdog wise, I gotta roll with Punahele Soriano. I'm looking at the odds. It's 50-50. I'm going Soriano 100%. And I'm going with and I'm gonna roll a dice with Belbiţă. No, I'm gonna roll the dice with Imavov. I'm gonna put Imavov and Soriano.
Okay, not mad at that. Punahele Soriano taking on Brendan Allen. Nassourdine Imavov taking on Ian Heinisch. In terms of my 2 underdog picks, I'm gonna go with Ewell at plus 162, and I also think Diana Belbiţă is the bigger, better fighter as well, or at least more effective fighter for this weight class. So I'm going to go with her as well, at providing 2 underdog picks there. Now, in terms of a favorite pick or 2, who are you considering?
Okay, I really like Punahele Soriano, man. I'm not gonna lie to you there. He's gonna put a beating on this guy. And let me get another one on there. I'm gonna go Adrian Yanez.
Okay, so we have 2 fights there on the prelims. That would actually combine for a healthy plus 186. $100 will return, 286 in that case. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return a pretty healthy $715. In terms of favorites, now I had a hard time picking multiple people on this card. So again, just like last week, I'm going to try going for the win rather than the payout. And I'm only going to go with Adrian Yanez. I feel really good about him. He's the only fight on the undercard I feel really good about.
What about Sijara Eubanks?
We have our bewares.
I know.
So
I agree with that.
I can't.
That's why I didn't throw that in there, man. I didn't throw that because, wow, you never know, man. You never know. But yeah, you never know. Yeah. All right, let's go.
So I'm going to stick with Adrian Yanez at minus 200 in that case. So of course we know that'll be a 50% return. $100 will return 150. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return 375. So let's end it on that note. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, do all of that algorithmic stuff that helps us out. Subscribe to the channel. Share the video with anyone you know that needs additional UFC fight-by-fight analysis. Comment, let us know which picks you are considering, what underdogs you're considering, what perhaps are some of your favorite picks, and even if you have a specific prelim parlay, post that in the comments and we'll definitely give our feedback on that. Otherwise, we are going to sign off. UFC Vegas 32, aka UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Dillashaw. This has been our prelim card prediction. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. We go by the name of Boxing MMA Picks. Let's get this money.
Let's do it.